Alright folks, it's Monday, day 967, day 1 of week 139, I believe. And time for the second installment of my new series, Top 10 Rules of Lifting I Routinely Break. Shout out to GVS. So moving on from the top 3 rules that I mentioned in the first installment, programming days off, programming deloads, and then doing cardio and lifting in the same session, i.e. flagrantly disregarding the interference effect. The fourth rule that I generally disregard is the whole bulking and cutting cycle. Now, this isn't 100% true. I have mentioned in the past, I've done like gain phases or phases of increased restriction, but it's not really the same thing as a bulk or a cut, in the sense that I never intentionally eat at a surplus to gain muscle or eat at a major deficit to get extra shredded. What I do is just, depending on the exigencies of life, pay attention to what my body seems to be doing in response to the training, my fatigue management, my diet, etc. And every once in a while, you get those blocks of time, those periods of time where it's just a lot easier to get stronger or gain muscle. And then it's also a lot easier to just get leaner. Like if you don't change anything, it tends to start indexing one way or the other. So what I do is, when that seems to be the case, like let's say, calories are the same, conditioning's the same, sleep's the same, but for whatever reason, be it environmental, be it work stress, life stress, whatever, or maybe the lack thereof, all of a sudden, I'm getting this like burst of strength. Or, the scale seems to be going up, except I seem to be appearing leaner. I'll just lean into that and continue to feed it with higher calories, higher protein, a little bit higher carbs, and see what happens for the next couple weeks. And that generally lends itself towards physique and performance progressions. Conversely, there'll be blocks of time where the scale's going down, I'm not getting weaker, but I'm starting to get like noticeably a lot leaner. Like veins are coming out of nowhere. I have hamstring separation, like it's just stupid. But at the same time, I'm just as strong. My joints feel brittle. I'm plenty recovered from session to session. So for whatever reason, that period of time seems to be more amenable to me being leaner. And so I'll just index in that direction. Pay a little bit more attention to sodium intake, pay a little bit more attention to carbohydrate intake, total calories, that kind of thing, and not plan to cut or cut intentionally, but since I'm doing that anyways, just kind of lean in that direction, pun intended. Okay, number 5, warming up, as well as preparatory activities in general. Well, that depends. Most of the time, even at close to 47 years old, I flagrantly ignore that because, again, my sport is that of a warfighter. I need to be able to just put on my kit and go. And part of that is maintaining a high level of preparedness at all times. I mentioned in the first installment of this series that generally speaking, my training in terms of overall intensity is maybe a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10. And what that means, and the reason for that, is because there's no particular instance where I'm so completely destroyed, whether it's local muscular fatigue or just overall systemic or psychological fatigue, that I can't still perform reasonably well under any circumstances. Be it first thing in the morning, late at night, no food, fully fed, unrested, fully rested, whatever, it doesn't matter. Now, that said, there are certain circumstances where if I'm going to do something out of the ordinary, it might be prudent to add a little bit of preparatory activity on the front end of that. It's still a relatively new thing, being able to press as heavy as I am now. So I generally, for the sake of my elbows and shoulders, do a little bit of banded warm-ups, like some push-downs, some pull-aparts, things like that, as well as take, 2 or 3 warm-up sets. Were I still doing heavy barbell squats and deadlifts, I'd probably follow the same procedure. I'd probably do some sort of mobility work, maybe a little bit of bands, and then take 2 or 3 progressively heavier warm-up sets to kind of get switched on before I got underneath anything heavy. Those kinds of training sessions, though, are very few and far between, with the exception currently, because I'm doing triples, of my pressing. But as far as pulling, conditioning, split squats, most of the things that I do, I generally just jump right into it. My warm-up, if you will, is turning the heated seats on in my truck, and by the time I get to the gym, which is only like a 5-minute drive, I'm already nice and warm. So again, it's not to say that warm-ups are useless and preparatory work is useless. I just generally ignore it because the type of training that I do doesn't necessitate it, and part of why I train the way that I train is to maintain a high level of preparedness without needing to warm up. I don't want to spend a day in the office and then have to sprint across the street for an emergency and pull a hamstring because I'm 47 years old and not adequately trained to do so. Okay, so we did bulking and cutting, we did warm-ups and preparatory work. That dovetails into the last one we'll do for this installment, and that is proper technique. This one goes out to the technique cyborgs and all the form police out there. Here's the thing, folks. When it comes to sport specificity, form is absolutely essential, and then it is next most important in the context of injury prevention. When it comes to hypertrophy and overall strength development, there's a lot more nuance that's involved that you, as the casual observer, aren't necessarily going to be able to tell without an in-depth understanding of the athlete that you're observing. Training history, injury history, chronological age, limb lengths, joint spacing, psychology. There's so many factors that go into what makes one person's pull down an effective one and another person's pull down an effective one when they're done very differently from one another. And this is in the context of strength hypertrophy. Now, pure hypertrophy, there are some arguments to be made for, slower eccentrics, more control, things of that nature. But again, I am in the camp of the prime driver of hypertrophy being muscular tension overload. First and foremost, which is going to lead into one of the topics for the next video, then volume, and then all the other nitty-gritty that everyone seems to get all bent out of shape about, whether or not it's optimal or suboptimal. You're leaning back too far. Oh, you're doing your reps too fast. Oh, you're doing... At the end of the day, is it working? And are you at any risk of injury? And most importantly, do you enjoy doing it that way? And will you continue doing it if you can do it that way without getting injured and it continues to progress you? Because, perfect is the enemy of good. Would it optimize my diet if I eliminated barbecue sauce? Probably. But then that'll affect my ability to consistently enjoy my meals and be satiated afterwards. So the end result in aggregate is a net negative. And optimality aside, there's a tremendous value in terms of just lifting experience, coloring outside the lines sometimes, quote unquote. Taking that extra rep when maybe you shouldn't, going up in weight maybe a little bit too early. At the end of the day, the whole point of doing this entire thing is exposure to stress and adaptation. So don't lose sight of that goal in your quest for optimality. That's 3 more rules that I generally disregard on a regular basis, Like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, join the Discord, and thanks for watching.